We pray for Pastor Saeed Abedini. He's been held in Iran for more than 18 months, sentenced to 8 years in prison on charges relating to his Christian beliefs. And as we continue to work for his freedom today, again, we call on the Iranian government to release Pastor Abedini so he can return to the loving arms of his wife and children in Idaho.
All right, folks, we are back here on the Steve Malzberg Show, and we are joined by our illustrious panel consisting today, and they'll be here all 3 hours with us, Republican strategist Ron Christie, and from Forbes magazine, Rick Ungar. Gentlemen, welcome.
Good to be here.
Pleasure to join you.
All right, thank you, guys. All right, so you just heard the president at the National Prayer Breakfast today. You heard me. I talked about it with John Bolton in the previous segment, and he said basically, you know, not only does it show what kind of country and regime Iran is, but he believes the president is doing this to placate the family of the pastor. They've been after him for a long time to try to obtain and secure the pastor's release. My question is, Rick, you know, this is nice and this is great, and I give the president credit for bringing up his name and others, including the gentleman being held in North Korea. Right. But he held negotiations with the Iranians. Why, you know, did we not secure the release as a goodwill gesture of one of the 3 prisoners that Iran is holding?
Well, first I got to say hello to my buddy Ron Christie, and just to remind him, he still owes me lunch.
Oh, there we go. Now, I might have to come along and eat to make sure
what
that
do you think, Ron? Should we let Malzberg in? 2 conservatives against 1 liberal? Could be an ugly lunch, man. You guys will kill me.
You can hold your own, my friend.
So, look, I have a suspicion about this. I think that in the original negotiation with the Iranians, that was probably not on the table. It was obviously a difficult negotiation. It still is. None of us have any idea where this is going. What I do envision kind of happening, I don't think it was an accident that the president brought it up at this time. I think that's probably a setup. I think as one of the signs of good faith that you're likely to see if these negotiations proceed is that he'll be released. This is what I think is in the cards. And as I say, I don't think the president would have brought it up unless if he didn't think that's what
Ron,
was going to happen.
He also brought up, like I said, the gentleman in North Korea and another prisoner being held, or 2 prisoners being held in Iran. So I hope that Rick is correct, but I have my doubts.
I have my doubts too, as well, Steve. With all due affection to my friend Rick, I think that.
But this is a love fest, isn't it? Lunch, affection, man.
We're changing the world, man. We are all liberals and conservatives who talk to each other.
On the Steve Malzberg Show. Yeah, go ahead.
Don't worry, this is where I pounce on him. So here's the real problem. I mean, this president has been negotiating with regimes that obviously, for reasons that the United States hasn't negotiated with in over 30 years, and I think they're playing the president for a fool, frankly. They are not taking their centrifuges offline. We still don't have any way of verifying they're not going to enrich uranium. And then this president comes out today, he says the right thing, but he does not know how to secure our Americans who are being held hostage. And I just think it's a disgrace that he didn't use the freeing of our hostages and those men and women who are in harm's way as an opening gambit in his negotiations.
Yeah, what about it, Rick? I mean, you're saying that something might happen on the back end, but what about, you know, having him insist, oh, it's too late now, up front that something happened as a goodwill gesture on the part of Iran?
Look, it's easy to get these people released. Just send Bill Clinton in and it all gets done. Look, I don't think it's that simple. And with respect to what Ron thinks this is all going to lead to, he may in fact be right. None of us have any idea where this is going to go. I actually applaud the president for taking a chance. You've got to do something to try and move these relationships in a better direction.
You mean taking a chance with negotiating with Iran, not today at the prayer breakfast?
No, with Iran.
Yeah.
I know I don't think it's crazy at all for Ron to say this is likely going to go wrong, because it probably has a better chance of going wrong than right. But you don't get anywhere. You don't create a better situation in the world if you don't go for it. Now, with respect to the prisoner, look, the Iranians are not stupid. They are not stupid. We may not like them. We may not like the way they behave. We certainly don't like that they may be building atomic bombs, but they're not stupid. And they know how valuable this person is as a chip when it comes to the president scoring some popularity off of it. I don't think it's an endgame scenario. I actually don't think it's going to be a scenario where if we reach a deal, he'll be part of it. I think he's going to be a chip played as a matter of goodwill in the process going along the deal.
Right, and I think what Ron and I are saying, and Ron, I don't want to put words in your mouth because you got to save room for all that food at lunch, but I think what you and I are saying is it should have been done already as the goodwill, as the chip at the beginning, not at the end.
It's easy to criticize, but you know
we
what?
love to criticize, right,
I know,
Ron?
but you know, in real life sometimes negotiations just aren't that simple.
Ron?
Well, I think obviously the president missed an opportunity to have negotiated the freedom at the front end. I think that this deal is one that the United States, while we sit here and believe that we're negotiating a good faith, I think the Iranians have shown nothing for us to believe that they're going to act in good faith, and having an individual freed would have been that goodwill gesture that I think we're all looking for. I just don't trust the Iranian government.
All right, let's move on to Syria, because I'm getting ready for you to say I just don't trust the Syrian government, which I don't think anybody here does.
Nobody does.
And of course, today they missed a key deadline, as I discussed with John Bolton. And you know, not only is he not surprised that Syria missed the deadline, but when he heard Jay Carney answering a question put forth to him by Ed Henry that we played from yesterday's press briefing, he kind of turns to his great ally, the Russians. You know, we're in this with the Russians and us together, and we expect Syria to, you know, it's a sad day when Jay Carney has to stand there and defend our policy by saying, well, you know, the Russians really are heading this up, and we're with them. Pretty sad, right, Ron?
Absolutely, and this is yet another vivid example of what happens when you lead from behind. You know, the president led from behind in Libya. The red line that the president drew around Syria about their using chemical weapons against their own people, they went walking right past that with impunity. And now you have a situation where, of course, the president looks weak on the world stage because he goes to Vladimir Putin, of all people, to bail the United States out. So yet another deadline missed, no surprise, yet another wasted opportunity for leadership by the United States president.
Rick, I mean, the chemical weapons, you know, we were bragging that this is going to be a landmark agreement, and it's going to rid the world of this horrific supply, and they're not living up to it. And what are we going to do about it? There's nothing we can do about it. We've already threatened enough.
No, there is something we can do about it if it continues. But look, you guys are not big on the subtleties of negotiation. I have hired many a lawyer who I didn't think very highly of at all, but they were the right person to get me what I wanted. And I think you have to put it in the context of that when talking about the weird relationship that we have with the Russians when it comes to Syria. There's no getting around the fact that the Russians are far more influential with the Syrian government than we are. So to use them, if we can use them effectively, and I will grant you that we have to underline the word if we can use them effectively, is actually an incredibly clever thing to do if it works out. Look, the Syrians are not going to give this up easily. I promise you they went into it anticipating they would pull every trick in the book. They just wanted to get off the hook of a potential
right,
attack
but
from
the art of
US.
negotiation, I do appreciate it. And when Syria agrees, or your enemy or the other party agrees, you expect them to live up to an agreement, and they're not doing it.
Well, they're not living up to it to the letter of the law, to be sure. John Bolton, I think, has a tendency, if you will, to over-exaggerate
but he didn't come up with that story. He was just weighing in on it. They missed a deadline.
They missed a deadline, but that doesn't mean they haven't been, I mean, I don't want to defend them, but it doesn't mean that they haven't been doing anything all along. It's not like they've been twiddling their thumbs and, oh, wait, today's the deadline. They just did not get to the point where they were supposed to. You can be cynical, which I think is warranted. I'm not saying that you shouldn't be, and say this was a planned missing of the deadline.
Right.
Or you can say they just didn't hit the deadline like they were supposed to.
Ron, when the IRS comes a calling for money, try pulling the Rick Ungar defense.
I do it all the time. What do you mean? Why do you think I hire that lawyer I don't like?
Exactly. And look, the whole issue here is that we should have had a containment strategy with Israel, our strongest ally in the region. President Obama snubs Israel at every opportunity to go to the Russians, to have the Russians verify, to have us going through them as a conduit, I think is a terrible geostrategic mistake for the United States. And President Obama, as you pointed out, Steve, What is he going to do now? I mean, the deadline's passed. What is he going to do? Nothing, because he ceded that ground to the Russians.
Well,
Seriously, Ron, how well do you think negotiations would have gone if we put Israel in the front line of that with the Syrians or the Iranians?
Let's talk about Israel right now, and then with something else we talked about with Ambassador Bolton. And I want you to hear John Kerry responding to the criticism he's gotten from folks in Israel, most recently members of families who lost loved ones in terror that was perpetrated from the West Bank, after Kerry said no Israelis ever been killed by terror from the West Bank. And here is he brings up his stellar military record. I had the nightmares of the election in 04 all over again. Here is cut number 45.
And Israel needs to understand, we will always stand by its security needs. But no one should distort what we're doing or saying because they're opposed to the peace process or don't like two states or whatever. And, you know, words, I have to tell you, my friend, I've been, quote, attacked before by people using real bullets, not words. And I am not going to be intimidated. I am not going to stand down with respect to President Obama's commitment to try to find peace in the Middle East.
Yes, sir, Sergeant Kerry, or whatever the heck he was. I can't believe he played his military record card, Ron.
What an arrogant, pompous jerk. First of all...
How do you really feel, Ron?
Yeah, well, since we're being polite and this is PG-13, I can't say everything what I think about the Secretary of State. But seriously, this administration has been so reckless of trying to push Israel to make concessions for peace, when of course they're not making the same concessions with the Palestinians. Secretary of State Kerry, for him to say that he's been under fire and he knows what it's like rather than words, give me a break. The Israelis live on the brink of elimination every day, and the bullying by Obama and the bullying by Kerry is not going to bring any solution to peace in the near
Now, Rick,
term.
of course, I'm sorry, Rick, he was referring, we got a minute left, he was referring to the criticism he's been getting and saying, I've had people shoot at me, so this is nothing. But I kind of agree with what John Bolton and Rick said about, and Ron said about the Secretary.
Well, I think the best solution would be to move John Bolton to a kibbutz right on the border and let it go there. I don't know what it is with John Bolton. He's like,
but wait a minute, we're talking about
Kerry.
Like
Dr. Strangelove.
We
He
got
won't
less
be
than a
happy
minute. I don't
until
want
the
to give you a
world's
chance. So, I mean,
Kerry, I'm going to be honest with you. I don't know what is going on there. I can't recall a time when Israeli officials would openly say these terrible things about a U.S. Secretary of State. I don't know what it's about. I really don't. I wish I was a fly on the wall when those conversations
well,
were
and maybe
happening.
He's threatening Israel with an intifada if they don't capitulate, and
Yeah,
with
I
a
doubt
boycott
it, though.
internationally if they don't capitulate. I mean, he's been making all these remarks.
But do you seriously think that's what he's doing? I mean, in the real world, or, you know?
I don't know. Sometimes
I don't think
the
so.
fake world is worse than the real. All right, gentlemen, we'll have you back in the next hour. I thank you very, very much. And when we come back, we'll be joined by Charles Krauthammer, ladies and gentlemen. Lots to talk about with Mr. Krauthammer, who has the audio version of his great new book out now, so we'll talk about that as well. Don't touch that dial. And no lunch yet. Steve Malzberg Show, Newsmax TV and radio. Don't go away.
The Steve